Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Well, welcome back. We're in that second quarter and we're trying to get everything prepared. And, half of the year is going to be up real soon. But the thing is, the world's changing, our economy's changing, things are happening. And this quarter, I told you, we were really going to concentrate on this 6P business owner formula that I've been working on and sharing. And that's people, promotion, pricing, productivity, profit, and processes. And what can we do as our business to really become better in that area? And today I've got a guest with us that's going to help us, because as this change is going on and life is changing as well as our economy and everything else. What can we do to make that difference? And Steve, would you share with our listeners today, what problem will you help solve for them?
I think one of the biggest problems that we have in small business today is maneuvering these seasons of change that are constantly bombarding us, both in our personal and professional life. And I want to see small business owners be able to navigate that successfully and healthfully.
Well, that is going to be great. And it's going to be a great conversation. Steve and I have got to know each other over the last couple of years, and he's a wealth of knowledge, folks. And he's the chief of staff at Navitas Wealth Advisors, where he provides strategic counsel to the executive team and oversees those day-to-day operations. He's worked in key leadership roles in the software and telecom industries and served as a pastor, and a missionary in South Africa. Steve, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Gary, I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys today. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'm excited to have you share a little bit with them, because you and I've got to know each other a little bit. And, we've all had seasons of change. And I think the problem for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, they sometimes get in their own head. And it's a challenge. I understand that. I've done it too. So I understand that. But I want to help people how they can navigate through that. And one of the things I think so important is this change, and how can we do it? And you've had a lot of changes happen in your life. Can you tell us about some of those key moments that for yourself that really have changed the direction of your life?
Sure. There's been many, honestly, but let's just focus on three today. So I was living the normal American dream life, nice home, good family, wife and three kids, working a job that I loved in the telecom space. It was a startup. It was exciting, but it was also around 2000, 2001. We all know what happened then. Is the dot-com crash happened in the stock market. We were one of those companies that, though had a healthy business plan and a good strategy, we were leveraged to the hilt as we were rolling up companies and preparing to go public. So we got caught in that transition of going from startup to going public, where we're all going to be wealthy, and things came crashing down financially on us. In fact, the company survived another 8 years. It was just under the ownership of a bank that had loaned us a lot of money to do the roll-ups. And that led me to a season of reflection. I actually probably stayed too long on the other side of that, trying to help employees that I had recruited find their way out. But when I did, I made a huge transition and wound up selling everything in our home. And we were going through that season of life that was called the empty nest. And my wife and I picked up and moved to South Africa. Understand that we had been married for 30-something years at the time, and we had never left Mississippi. And we moved from Mississippi to Johannesburg, South Africa in 2004, and spent a season of our life serving the people in South Africa. We went as missionaries, and we did a lot of different things there. And one of the other changes that happened during that time is we went from empty nest to having the nest again. We adopted a 20-month-old young man there who's now a senior in high school. And he came to live with us. And another providential thing happened. My daughter got sick. We moved back to Mississippi after 6 years of serving in South Africa, and we re-entered the workforce and had those transitions. But then in 2012, my wife was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we spent 3 years battling that. We lost her in 2015. And so I found another transition of life, and not only being single again after a long marriage, 37 years of marriage, but being a single dad at an older than expected age. And so moving through all those transitions, and then I find myself coming through COVID and working a small business there, and then moving on into the position I am now with Navitas Wealth Advisors as their chief of staff. So you can see the cycle of change, both personally and professionally, all through that time.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it really sets up what we want to talk about is how people can navigate this change. And one thing Steve really works in is getting people to see the bigger picture side of it so you can really move forward. And kind of my question was going to be for you, how can we navigate these seasons? For some, it's dramatic change. For others, it's may not be as dramatic, but it can be professionally or personally, or at some points, as you've shared, it can be in both of those areas. So how can people kind of navigate that, Steve?
Yeah, it's been an interesting process, and I've kind of discovered a framework, or maybe a set of lenses where we look at changes as a puzzle to be solved. Some of the changes we choose to make. So we may choose to move somewhere. We may choose to change jobs. And then other things like sickness and disease, or an economic downturn that may not be we may not could have forecasted having those things. But in every one of these cases, we come through this, we have to look at it through a lens of the final picture is going to be unclear. And the steps to that process are undefined. And so what we have to do to navigate and survive those changes is really reflected, interestingly enough, in the 5 steps of grief that people go through. Every change in your personal life or your career, no matter, like I said, whether you choose it or not, involves loss. There's a loss of something. It may be a personal loss, such as when my wife passed away. Many of your listeners may be able to identify with the loss of a loved one. The loss may be that your surroundings are no longer familiar. You may have relocated. Now, I relocated to a whole nother culture, not just another part of the country. Right. And there was definitely loss of the familiar there. There's another type of loss where our things are no longer as we were used to them. Our normal has been unhinged. There's a new normal. Or the loss could be a separation from things that we really defined in our identity. So we may have lost a job that was so much tied up in who we were. And so you may be familiar, Gary, with the 5 stages of grief, but if you're not, I'll just run through them for your lierners.
Yeah, if you
The first stage of grief is shock and denial. We say, this is not happening. We just can't come to grips with what the change is. The next step is anger. This really upsets me. I can even recall the choice of moving to South Africa. When I got there, we were supposed to use a car of a friend of ours to get around, because that's a whole story, but she had wrecked the car 2 days before we got there. And we were stuck for like 6 weeks. And there was some anger that built up, man. It's like, And so there's that stage there. Then there's the bargaining that people go through. I'm going to stay where I am. That way I cannot lose anymore. We see a loss and we just say, hey, we make a bargain with ourselves. Sometimes we bargain with God even, right? If you'll change this, but the real underlying thing is, I'm going to stay in a place where I can't lose anymore. And then the next stage that you experience is depression. And we probably have all been through some level of anxiety. And like, we come to a place where, man, this is all just meaningless. It doesn't motivate me. I don't want to get up. I don't want to move forward. And it doesn't mean a depression where we're laying in the bed and can't get out of it. Although I've been in those places from time to time, just confess that. but it's where we really don't see meaning in what's happening around us. And then the fifth step is acceptance. I'm choosing to move through this. And when we go through those seasons of change and the accompanying loss, we'll actually go back and cycle through this stage of grief over and over again. We'll come back and come back to the shock and denial, like, okay, I made it through that part, but the rest of this can't be happening. And we'll move back through it. And the only difference is that we'll actually, the pain of it will lessen a little bit as we go through it again and again. And in actuality, that each of those stages may be an instant, a brief time that we just pass through that stage because we've kind of got used to where we are. But eventually we'll go through that cycle over and over again until we get to a place where the change becomes the new normal. And then we settle in and move forward again. That all sounds like a great framework. Working through it individually are things that we all find challenging, right? Because when it's happening to you, when you're in each of those stages, even the acceptance stage, it's like, this is new ground I'm plowing through. And no matter if I've been there before you and I'm help guiding you, you still have to experience it yourself.
Yeah, I think that becomes the real key, is how can we kind of get ourselves through that? I've had clients before that go through a divorce.
Right.
I could see some of those same 5 things that come up and stuff there. What would be some things you would say, Steve, that you think would help? Because you got to get to the new normal, but
Right.
what helped you kind of move forward to get to that new normal?
Yeah.
So people, if they feel like they're in there, I know you got to accept it, but
right.
from there, you still got to move forward.
But even the acceptance, we have to go through the other stages before we ever get to that point.
Yeah.
Right? And one thing is just being self-aware of what's happening to you and being okay with it. It's like you can't shortcut the process of moving through change. I'm going through a season right now in our business where we have merged some companies together. We've gone from individual entrepreneurs to now we're an enterprise. And that's a whole different mindset, right? And some of your listeners may be thinking, they may be in that entrepreneurial stage now, aspiring to enterprise. And so going through those things, the complete mindset shift is that what was normal and what I was used to is no longer there, even though I know the outcome is going to be fantastic. Okay. And I have to be self-aware that there's going to be days that I'm going to be in denial that this is changing. I'm going to be angry about something that's happened. I'm going to just sit back and cross my arms and say, I'm not losing anymore. We may get up in the morning and go, I don't want to go to work today. This is just not working. And then that I'm going to actually get put on your big boy pants and decide I'm going to move through it. And so just being aware, self-aware of that is one of the first things, and being okay with the fact that you're not okay with it right now. It's just part of the process of moving through. And so we work through those on the personal side of things. But then we also, as leaders, have to help our whole company move through it. And there's some things I really would like to talk about there.
Sure.
When you design, when you make the decision to make a change, whether you're going to add a new product, open a new location, hire that first person you're going to delegate things to, whatever that process is, just know that whatever you've decided, getting there, that's going to face challenges. It's not going to be smooth. So be sure that in your convictions that you are convinced that the change is the best thing for the company. And when you're convicted of that, it'll sustain you in those dark days when it's just not looking like anything's moving right, because that's going to happen. We may have a blueprint for how to go there. The problem with the blueprint is that people execute it. And when people execute it, there's flaws in it because we're flawed people, right? So that's the first thing, is to be convicted in where you're going. The next thing I would say would be clearly outline a path that will lead you to successful change. So even if a person recognizes that the change will ultimately be the best thing that can happen for their company and even for themselves, like they can see that the company's going to explode and things are going to be great when you get on the other end. If they can't see a clear path that allows them to be at least competent in the new world, they're not going to move there. They will stay they'll continue to do the wrong thing with excellence rather than moving to the right thing with incompetence. So you got to give them a way to grow into that and a clear path for becoming excellent at what they do in the new world. So that's another thing. The third thing I would say would be authentic in your communications. You're going to hit bumps along the way. And when you do, don't sugarcoat it to your team. Your team will recognize on the front end better than you. They'll recognize it's going to be difficult to get where we're going because they don't have the same vision you do. You got to share vision, promote vision constantly. You know, what does it say? Somebody's got to hear something 8 times before it even begins to register. And so that constant communication, but being truthful in your communication about what's going on, that we're all trying to navigate this together, and the bumps are real. We can't sugarcoat the bumps. And sometimes we even have to make pivots to get to where we're going. That the path we chose is not the path that we need to use to get to where we're going. We have to adjust, move left, move right, and then move forward. So, but the communication is real key. Because your people will follow you if you're communicating. When you're not communicating, they make up what the reality is in their minds, and that starts promoting the things that they do. Yeah, the fourth thing I would say is celebrating celebration, and I say celebrate the 1% improvements, especially in our rapidly changing environments. You may never get to that 100% utopia of what you envision the ultimate change will be. And this is true whether it's personal life or business life, and I call it the blended life because they all overlap with us as small business owners. So if you improve 1% a week, that means your company is going to be over 50% better in 1 year. And you need to celebrate those steps along the way. Whenever there's an improvement, celebrate it. Let everybody know that you recognize there's improvement. No, we're not where we need to be, but man, look how much further we are than yesterday. And so acknowledging those who change and acknowledging the changes they make is really important to bring the organization along with you. The fifth thing I would say is don't be afraid to iterate. Analyze what's working, look at what's not working, and then make the adjustments. If we're dogmatic about that initial path, we may not be serving our company as well because we have clear vision, but going back to what I said before, it's like a puzzle. You know, if you get that, you dump the pieces of the puzzle out and it's all just a blur of what the image is going to be. And as you start putting the pieces together, it starts to form the image, but it may not be the image that you thought. Like you start working on one area and go, oh, I thought that was the upper left-hand corner. It's actually the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, now I have to adjust and move forward. So I'd say those 5 things would be a good start in managing change in your business and in your personal life.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. You're listening to the Small Business Answer Man podcast. We'll be right back. And now back to the show. Well, Steve, that's a great framework that you really shared with us that we've got to think about in all those areas. And it's in our business as well as personal life. And that's where I really love how it flows back and forth to the two. So the challenge is, everyone hears things and, we've been on the podcast sharing, but the challenge is always now starting and doing something. So how would you kind of summarize to someone that they know they're in that seasons of change, let's say either personally or professionally, either way? Right now, business owners are feeling a lot of fluctuations and changes because the economy is definitely changing. And we've had a pretty good run and things are not just the same as it was. How can they really start moving forward to really recognize it and put things in place so they can change their organization if they need to?
Yeah, overall, one thing I didn't say in those 5 steps is you got to get up in the morning and execute, right? Yeah. You've got a business plan, and yeah, the economy is challenging and sales aren't where they need to be, but you were successful for a reason. And so you got to look at what works and what doesn't work. You may need to go look at your product mix and say, where's my most profitable products right now? And that may not be the lead dog in your sales platform, but you may need to shift. So analyze the things that are working and start moving towards those. And then, like I said, the 5 steps, just summarize them. Act on your convictions. Keep outlining a clear path to the ultimate change. Be authentic in your communications. Celebrate your wins, and don't be afraid to iterate and change. And just like I said, and to summarize that is get up in the morning and execute.
Yeah, execute. Got to make it happen. That's the thing. As a business owner, you've got to be that visionary to move the company forward each and every day. And, if you're telling your people it can't be done, then guess what? It's creating a challenge, a roadblock right out there.
It won't
Steve,
be
I know you got a free download for our audience that you're willing to give them about change to help them through this process. Can you share that?
Sure. They can go to stevekinsley.com and drop your email address in there, and it'll email you 10 tips for managing change and embracing the unknown.
Now that's key, folks, because now it's about, okay, what do I need to do? Because the unknown's coming. If it's not to you now, it's going to come to you. So go to that. Again, we'll have it on the website. We have it on our app. You can just click on the link, stevekinsley.com, get the download, and really think about how can you kind of not only for yourself, but also for your company, help navigate this change, because it's part of life. We all have to do it. Some people have different stories that you heard Steve's at the beginning than what others do. But the thing is, in business, that's the key as an entrepreneur, is that you can adapt and navigate yourself through change. So Steve, I really appreciate the conversation and you sharing your knowledge with our listeners today.
Gary, I really appreciate the opportunity. Feel free to call on me anytime. I'd love to come back and talk about this some more.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing. Now, before I let you go, though, I want to ask you one question I ask every guest. What's your best business tip or advice you would give for business owners and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, get the book, Working Without a Net, How to Survive and Thrive in Today's High-Risk Business World. The book's about 30 years old, but the information is timeless, and I use it almost as our Bible for managing our business.
Excellent. We'll have that in show notes again, so you can click there and check that book out and check out that reference that Steve gave to you. Steve, thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Gary. Have a great day.
Now, listeners, I always give one action item. So what can you do is take action items. One, I would tell you, go get his download, because you've got to navigate change. Business is changing. And the thing I've set up, and I've really talked about this in some other podcasts this quarter, is we have to realize the economy is changing, business is changing, and we have to change. We as being the business owner, entrepreneur. And if we don't change, then that puts us in a cycle of where the business is going to fail. Instead, be willing to change. Look at your operations. Look at your financials we've talked about. What needs to happen in your business to make that change? And really give yourself time to think. Steve started off with really getting awareness of what's in your business and what's going on, and get that awareness that's there for yourself so you can get clear on the changes you need to make. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest for you. And thanks for joining us. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.